YellowTelescope's YellowTelecast, the best practices for the best practices, providing the medical industry's best practices to the medical industry's best practices since 2008. Are you a doctor? Do you work for a doctor? Do you want to earn more, be more efficient, retain your team, hire for success, or just want to have a better lifestyle? I bet you do. What should you expect from the podcast? A lighthearted, casual, fun, hopefully funny, informative, impactful, well-founded look at the medical industry from a pair of passionate, competent, confident, experienced, talented, questionably good-looking, unquestionably good-looking industry leaders, men of the Renaissance, if you will, and even if you won't, who enjoy Scotch whiskey, world travel, music, single malt Scotch whiskey, fine dining, not fine dining, family, art, and Ryan bourbon whiskeys while implementing intensive training and expert staffing, resulting in unparalleled growth. Listen to the podcast, and for more on how Yellow Telescope can help you grow, visit YellowTelescope.com for upcoming events, published articles, recorded speeches, past issues of our complimentary email newsletter, testimonials, and more.
All right. Get back up.
Okay. You ready to do this thing?
Yeah. What is this, episode 27?
27. We're back.
Unbelievable.
I've missed you.
Are we on a video right now?
We are. Well, depending if you're watching in podcast land or YouTube land. Welcome back, Edward.
No, but I mean, you're actually in the flesh. Like,
oh, I'm actually here right now. Where are you?
I'm also right here.
I would like a holographic Ed.
No, we've had enough of that for the last 8 months. Thank you.
Fair enough. Well, it's wonderful to see you. Literally, not just for the camera, second time I've seen this guy physically in the flesh since probably around March or something of 2020, a better part of a year ago. So we are excited to do our 27th episode of the podcast. Couple of quick programming notes as we dive in. Number one, topic today coming up is going to be all about our 6-month mantra, why you should have one, why we have, and what ours is, and it relates to having a little bit more staff than you need. We're going to be talking about staffing and staff retention and retaining yourself and things related to that within your business, within your practice, and so forth. So that's coming up shortly. We'll, of course, be introducing a couple of our delicious whiskeys as we do on every single podcast, dating back to 2014, Ed.
Yum.
We've been doing this almost 7 years.
I know.
Not too many per year. They said 3.5 a year. Sometimes we get motivated. But also, one of the reasons that we're getting this thing live right away and that we're recording right now, right around our annual Yellow Telescope seminar, just having finished our 10th annual Yellow Telescope training seminar, 10th anniversary event at the beautiful St. Regis Bell Harbor, which was a smashing success, is that this week only, if you're listening to this, hopefully between November 9th and November 13th during that week, if you're not, hang on a second, I'll tell you what to do. You want to get in touch right away with us at 305-455-0720 or info@yellowtelescope.com. Again, 305-455-0720, info@yellowtelescope.com to take advantage of our early bird special we have going on this week only. 2 interesting, if not 4 interesting, if not 8 interesting things worth mentioning very briefly, but not more than 10, and I promise not to go to more 100, maybe 1,000, and that's maximum interesting things.
I'm counting.
Number one, the event is next year, October 22nd and 23rd, that weekend in Miami again. I know you don't know what you're doing necessarily right this moment, but what we do is we allow you to sign up now, then cancel till 45 days prior with no penalties. So you're not stuck signed up. You can sign up 1 person, 10 people, 3 people, whatever you want. Second, we break into 12 monthly payments with no interest, just to make it a little easier on the cash flow. Not that most of our clientele particularly need it to survive, but it does make it a little easier than paying one lump sum. You just kind of charge the credit card monthly. And third, and maybe most importantly, this week we do run a once-a-year special only. It is our deepest discount of the year for anyone who was not in the room this last year. And to give you an idea, we're talking about, I think it's somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 off per person if you sign up during this week. So massive savings, no risk at all. Interestingly, we honestly didn't know if we'd be able to have an event this year, this past year for our 10th anniversary, what with the COVID. And we were able to do it in a safe and distanced fashion. We also had a virtual component. We're hoping that by next year it'll just be all live. Otherwise, we'll have an option as well. But what's interesting is we broke our all-time attendance record again.
Yeah.
We honestly, certainly in March or April, thought, who knows if we're having it. And then as we got closer, we kind of anticipated a few that wouldn't be able to come or what have you. And although some had to come virtually, it was nice to have another record-breaking year. We do have a lot of people that had to pre-sign up for next year. We always sell out 80, 70, 85% of the spots a year in advance. So you do want to get signed up, or we do literally sell out our room block at the hotel and then we're out of sign up. So you're going to save money and you got to get in line. Now, if you're hearing this in December, you're listening to this podcast a little late, we do offer some specials as we get a little closer to the event till it gets to absolute full price.
Yep.
And it's just kind of progresses. It gets worse and worse and worse the longer you wait. So if it's still sometime in early 2021, you can still get a good deal, so get in touch. Just may not be the super duper early bird special. I think that was maybe 11 or 12 quick things, but that's why we get this podcast live, is to make sure everyone is in the know out there. If you have anything to add to that, the floor is yours.
I really, really appreciate it. Nothing to add at all. I think that it really just goes to show you how thrilled we were, how many people were still craving, really maybe more than ever, the information, the camaraderie, the motivation for heading into 2021 is to be your best year ever. We're excited that, of course, we don't always wear the exact same t-shirt always, but as we like to say, these are the good old days. And we debuted the 10th annual t-shirt.
Every year a new t-shirt for our VIP attendees, among many other swag items.
That's right.
Yeah, these are special because of the times.
But as we've been preaching, since the shutdown, that, in some ways we need to be the cautiously optimistic, logical people in the room. And we continue to be that, I hope. We try to be. And as we've seen from the performance of the vast majority of our clients, 2021 should be, knock on wood, again, another, banger year after most of them actually breaking records in 2020 despite a shutdown and pandemic.
Yeah, it's exactly right. What's interesting is there's so much to look back on during the times of COVID that is so negative. And we always say, it goes without saying, putting aside the reality of this thing in terms of people actually getting sick, people having relatives that have passed away, putting aside the seriousness. Again, for those of us who have been fortunate enough to stay safe and have families that have stayed safe and feel well, the reality is, despite the major challenges this year brought, between the volatility that comes with an election, the COVID pandemic, oil wars in Texas and so forth. There's always some hurricanes coming through all over the place. Yeah. There's always something. Although we have a lot of negative memories about the year, one of the things we talked a lot about in the annual seminar is that we are creating a more and more insulated and bulletproofed and armored personal self because of that's able to withstand and overcome more, which is just part of life, which is finding joy even during the difficult times. And like you said, our practices have just crushed it. Nearly every single one of them will have their best year ever in 2020. So you look back and say, well, it was a terrible year. In a lot of ways it was. From a purely business perspective in a bubble, for the vast majority of our industry, we can look back and be really, really grateful because it's been the best year ever. So we will be selling out next year's event. That we feel very confident in. And we hope the worst of this thing is behind us. We don't even know that. No one knows for sure.
Yep.
And that's why you have to wake up every day saying that these are the good old days. We've been preaching it for a decade.
That's right.
For about a month or two there, it wasn't the good old days.
No, it wasn't.
And we didn't wear the t-shirt then.
No.
But we're deciding. We made the decision that
right.
We're back to it now.
That's right.
Now.
And it's exciting. So we've got a lot to talk about today. We also, of course, have some whiskeys to sip.
We do.
It's nice to sit with you again. We'll talk maybe a little bit around the whiskey. I know we took the opportunity to do some traveling over the last scant 7-8 months.
A bit.
It's kind of around.
A little.
Yeah. Well, we were locked down.
We got around.
Had to make sure that obviously we were keeping our families safe and we were not getting sick and infecting other people, and had the luxury of being able to sort of lock down, separate, distance to a great extent. And obviously closed the offices, went virtual. Obviously our clients don't have the opportunity. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to do that. So really took advantage.
Well, yeah, I think every industry has their thing. And I think for us, we worked maybe harder than almost anybody during the pandemic outbreak for those first 3 or 4 months, even when doctors were forcibly at home, unable to do surgery. We were working double or triple time. I think the benefit for our particular consultancy was once we got back to work, we were able to do some traveling and work from wherever we were at, just because there really wasn't a lot of places to go. So we encouraged all the team to work from home, be with their family, go wherever they want to go. And I know both of us went a couple places, and it was a great time to work on various projects, right? You can never get caught up. And So one of the other things I do want to mention, if you're listening to this podcast, if there's 2 things you do after listening to this, number one is get signed up for the YellowTelescope seminar that we talked about the 11th here. But number 2 would be to go check out YellowTelescope.com. we always love people to go to the website and learn and buy stuff from us and whatever, because we're a company. But actually, for the first time, I think in 6 or 7 years, we have completed, after 11 months of work, I believe over 500 man and woman hours. Thank you, team, led by Abby and the rest of the gang, and John Barry at SE Oversight, and our great design team over in England. We are now live with the brand new YellowTelescope.com, which is pretty exciting.
Not shiny, but it is brand spanking. And we actually specifically didn't want the design to be that sort of, brand new, shiny, techie, everything. We'd like something that's a little bit more evergreen. Maybe not necessarily to last as long as the last site. We'll probably redo it a little bit sooner. But we actually really want it to last and be, we're extremely particular, shocking no one. But we're excited about it. We love your feedback.
Yeah, it was Vampire Weekend who once said, 2021, what you think about me? I can wait a year, but I can't wait 3.
That's right.
And that was a pre-COVID line that I think was prescient, and we are excited about our website and seeing what it can do for the next few years. But it is chock full of amazing information, past podcasts and so on. So we'd love to have your feedback on it. It shows a little bit of what our SE Oversight team can do, the attention to detail we have, just like the SEOversight.com website is a great example of that, with the small movements and little animations and just the deep dive that we did. But we have been traveling around that, and it's great to see so many of our team going places. I can tell you where I've been, but I don't know if you want to tell me where you've been, just to share with the gang where we've been creating the best year for our Yellow Telescope clients in history.
Looking back, it was quite an experiment. I think we weren't really sure exactly how it was going to work. I always felt pretty confident we'd be able to do, what we do best when physically unable or not allowed to visit doctors' offices and be with clients physically, which I was finally able to do in early October, which was really exciting when somebody finally allowed a Floridian into their office, because before that, I think you referred to it as, typhoid Florida, because...
Yeah, well, what I always mention is everyone just assumes we have it, and the answer is no, we don't. We do have something, it's just not COVID. It's kind of part of being in Florida. You want to catch a little something while you're here, because all the weird stuff happens
just
here.
The souvenir to take home. But we were finally allowed. It was great to finally visit some clients, but in the meantime... got real claustrophobic here in the condo in Miami Beach. Can't complain. It's a nice place, but being the New York City of Florida.
And back then, it was washing your vegetables and nobody knew what was going on. Yeah. Everyone was inside, and it's an urban environment we live in. So you headed out. Where'd you go?
Started off in Jupiter Farms, Florida.
Jupiter? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Not the planet, the small town. Then went over, came back to Miami.
The home of wealthy retirees and so forth.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Also
golf courses and such. Beautiful beaches.
We actually were the farm areas, really more like equestrian community, kind of like, kind of boondocks, but that's kind of what we were looking for. Just swung the pendulum right to the other end of the spectrum.
I like it.
Went out to Sarasota, visit Mom for a few weeks.
Spent the month out there.
Spent the month
Mama
out there.
Dukes. Miss her.
Yep, she's doing well.
Miss Ann, say hello to Ann for me.
Certainly will. Hopefully she's watching. Love you, Mom. Then... John says hi. We ended up thinking, okay, well, my girlfriend, not from the U.S., she's from New Zealand, she's a Kiwi, had to reset her visa, which was an interesting thing. And we thought, well, it's kind of tough to get to New Zealand. Who knows if I'm allowed back in? So if we're going to go somewhere, took a puddle jumper over to the Bahamas.
Fantastic. So, next thing you know, Bob's your uncle, as she'd say.
That's right. Robert's your father's brother.
So out to Eleuthera, the most elusive of Bahamian islands, home of conch fritters and beautiful azure beaches. So that was lovely. Spent a month. You were working for a month from the Bahamas. No. This is what we Floridians are able to do, by the way. I think the only people who live like this are sort of like people in Hawaii. They're like, well, I just chose to work for Maui for a month. I took a little plane over there, and there I was just sort of enjoying the lava sand.
Yeah, and you're like, why? Because it's a quick flight, So it was fine. It's like we had very reliable Wi-Fi. I ran several trainings via Zoom.
You can swim back if you need to. 55 miles, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. It's a long swim. But we did it very successfully. It was, I think, a really good experiment. We also signed up like 3 or 4 long-term clients launching into the end of this year into next year. So it's still a very productive summer. Launched some folks, even while kind of taking that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I know you had much more of
I think that's where our trips picked up together, even though I didn't see you. So my wife and I, we did something similar. We always head out in the summer to Bridgehampton. We've done different podcasts from the place up there that we go to each year for the last several summers. And we went there. It was a little scary. We didn't know if we should fly or not. Now I've really done the research and think flying's probably okay if you play things right. But I joked around that we bought first-class tickets for a whopping $248.
That's right.
Things were cheap, and we flew up, and happily that went well and safely. And we kind of just hung out out in quarantine for about 6 weeks up in Bridgehampton, which was beautiful. Cases were like 0 there. That's what we do every summer. That's lovely. You visit a few times when you take the helicopter in.
Not this year, my friend.
Go to our Instagram, check out Ed on a helicopter. It happened. So from there, we basically stayed around the Northeast, but instead of coming home, because we didn't even have the option for our children to do live school, it wasn't even if you wanted to go back, you could. So we decided just not to come back. So it was a swamp down here in Florida. It was hot. So we went all over the place. We went to Nantucket, which was gorgeous. Beautiful White Elephant Hotel. They were fantastic. A shout out to them.
I'm also excited to talk about this guy.
It's coming up. A little nectar from the summer. This is a little summer playlist. We'll be coming back to in the whiskey momentarily. Very, very briefly after that, we went to see some friends in Connecticut. We went up to Vermont for a week, which was gorgeous as well. We loved it there. We went into Philadelphia and showed my son Penn, where my wife and I both graduated from, and kind of indoctrinated and brainwashed him into believing that he wanted to go there as well, which hopefully he will go Quakers. And we then went from there over to Ohio to Chicago to one of my very best buddies, Jordan's birthday party for his 40th, and surprised him for that. We then went to Louisville, where we did a little whiskey tasting. That's going to be coming up here shortly. Saw Angel's Envy and Bernheim and a number of other distilleries, and also stopped after Louisville. We went to Nashville for a couple of weeks and checked out Nash Vegas. Into Georgia for 3 weeks to beautiful Lake Oconee, catching fish, hanging out, being distanced, and then back just a week or two ago, heading into the YT seminar. And who knows what the winter holds? Maybe a little skiing, maybe a little Bahamas trip. Who knows what could be possible? We're really taking advantage of this because these are the good old days. Why not make hay while the sun shines and make trips when the folks can't go do their normal stuff? But I met you I didn't meet you up in the Northeast, but you were up there around the same time on launching some clients, I believe.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was great to finally be able to go. I was supposed to visit all these practices in like April. And then, of course, they're like, nah, we're going to hold off on that. So ended up having to go out finally when I was able to do it in like early October. And just so happened, had 3 clients that we were continuing to launch. Flew into Boston, quick night there, drove up to Portland, Maine. Great place to be.
Great clients up there as well.
Yep, as
Maine
well
plastic
as
surgery,
Maine
awesome.
Plastic Surgery. Shout out. Great to see everybody. Went down to Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Team Eliop.
That's right.
Missed that crew. Ash and the Eliop a lot.
Yeah, came to seminar. It's great. Thank you again for your hospitality. And then went down to Wayne, New Jersey.
Beautiful Wayne, New Jersey. One of our oldest, longest, and best clients.
Yep.
Unfortunately, they chose to live in Wayne, New Jersey. But like you said, great pizza.
Yeah.
Great stops for Italian food when you're not dousing your whole body in drawn butter and lobster.
Yeah, which is what you do normally in Portland, etc.
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
What Wayne does in Maine.
Yeah, but then you kind of dry out from the butter and go into the pizza.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Fresh meatballs and delicious Italian eats in North Jersey. I love it.
But it was great because I think we were literally speaking to all of our clients every single week. What with not being on the road, we're just like, well, we're just going to talk instead of every 2 weeks. We're just like, let's talk every week. And we knew what was going on. We saw the results that were happening. We're Zooming, we're video conferencing with everybody. But to finally just be able to be back in the office, seeing it real life, seeing the results, working with the team, seeing the patients coming in the door, seeing how the protocols were actually working effectively, was super rewarding. It was like, let me just go do what I love to do again. And it was great to be able to do that, particularly heading into seminar after having been sort of locked down for so long, just sort of felt right.
Yeah, and I hear you. And I put in a lot of hours playing Uno.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old, and I've really mastered Monopoly as well as the Veil Monopoly Veil Edition. It is nice actually to sometimes get back to work and do what you love.
Exactly.
I think that the reality is most of you guys listening to this are probably at some level, even if you had your best year ever, or if you were pretty impacted by the pandemic, it's been a tiring year. And I think everyone needs a chance to recharge. I think the seminar is one opportunity. I think traveling and seeing clients is another. I think taking time for yourself is another. I mean, I was tired, and I was actually out on the road, and there was a car there.
Yeah.
There's no joke coming, so don't worry. I was in front of it, and they're like, you shouldn't run and try to beat the car. And I said, why? They're like, because you're going to get tired. And so I decided to just walk behind the car, but they said I was going to get exhausted.
No joke coming.
Yeah, but that's me. I'm a little burned out. I'm a little tired. I'm getting reduced, but you seem lit. You seem excited.
Yeah. I'm about as excited as I don't know. I was going to make a Johnny Depp joke, but that's probably too soon. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. Well, I think we should dive in with some knowledge. Real briefly, let's run through a couple of whiskeys we want to showcase. So at our seminar, all of our virtual attendees got to go through 3 different tastings of very, very rare, hard to find, if not unfindable, bourbon and rye whiskey. We did an American theme this year for our 10th anniversary. The election just seemed apropos.
Yep.
And the fact that a lot of us are doing a lot of staycations and traveling throughout the states, which are beautiful. We sometimes forget just how great traveling intranationally is versus internationally, which is great as well. And so I picked up a few selections along the way, and I also have some buddies who really love this stuff and have gotten me some rare picks and so on. And so I sort of lined my home a little bit with some fine bottles.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
It's pretty impressive. I actually, when the first time I came back after seeing Jon after the shutdown, he was still cataloging some of the pickups that had been delivered from the prodigious buying over the road. It's exciting. Not even all to drink, just to collect.
Yeah, most of the stuff's never going to go down the old gullet. I hope it does, because that means we did very, very well in life. Some of it will, but some of it won't. So we have 2 quick bottles to showcase. One I think that you guys can easily get, and one I want you to keep aware of. So first of all, on my trip to Nantucket, I once knew a man who went to Nantucket.
Okay.
And his name was Ed Searing. And Ed and his very good friend growing up from high school, Janie Kay, hello Janie Kay, who ran inns and hotels in the area, had sort of taken Ed in and really shown him around the town. And it turned out there was a distillery there. They made beers and they made various spirit, but they had a single malt whiskey, which they can't call Scotch, even though we think of a single malt Scotch.
It's actually not Scotch.
It isn't, because they can't legally call it that way. That in the same way you can't call anything bubbly champagne unless from the Champagne region.
Well, hence the notch.
So they created a bottle, as Ed alludes to, called, if you can see it in podcast land and YouTube land, The Notch, which is a Nantucket-based non-Scotch, even though it's really made in the style of Scotch. And this is wonderful. Ed had brought me back a really expensive gift of the 12-year-old, probably a good 5 years ago, and I fell in love with the bottle. It was so delicious. And it had won, I believe, World Whiskey Awards, Best American Single Malt, something like that, Best American Whiskey that year. And you really just can't get it. It's hard to find, and if you do find it, it's very, very expensive. And so I got a bottle while I was there on Nantucket of the Notch, and this is the Notch 15.
Yeah.
And these folks are a class act. Unfortunately, with this bottle, there was something wrong with the cork, and some of it had leaked out, and they were so gracious and kind that they actually sent another bottle out, which we haven't opened yet, because this is the finishing of the bottle. We drank it this summer. And so really, really class act there. And they sent us another bottle as a thank you, even though, this is going to be something that you buy as a luxury, maybe for a great gift for someone's 30th, 40th, or 50th, or a special gift for your significant other, good buddy. But you can now get these for about $500 or $600 a bottle. So it's a fine and rare whiskey. This is the 15-year-old Notch. They do sell a 12 as well. I'd never had it because they didn't even have it when you bought me the 12.
It's still in the barrel.
Also won World Whiskey Awards this year as Best American Single Malt. So if you want something interesting and unique, but still Scotchy, this is it. This is 15 years old, bottled in 2018, and this is batch number 1, their very first batch. So we're going to try it. Side by side with that, should we clinky this one?
I think
Cheers.
so.
We'll see what we think. It's very, very dark, but it is just regular oak cask.
48%.
I believe there must be some sherry going on there. Tis the nectar d'or, in my view.
Nice.
So really tasty.
So delicious. What fun.
It really, it's got a Macallan quality to it. It reminds me a bit of the Macallan 18, kind of taste the sherry.
Yeah.
Rich, not a light Glenlivet, not a smooth, thin kind of thing. It's got layers. It's meaty, maybe some describe it as.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but it's just damn good.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course,
it's
I
very
got
typical
flavor notes
style.
from, toffee butterscotch. There's certainly a layer there. I almost get a little bit of like a coffee note. It's a little bit of spice on the end. It's extremely smooth.
Yeah.
The
only other thing I'd say about it is when you look at Connecticut, Nantucket, Hamptons, that kind of area, it's all kind of just about out to sea. Just like the edges of Scotland are where most of that whiskey is being made. Even though this is made more in a Speyside style without peat, it's got very similar weather and very similar seasons as what you'd find in a Scotland. So it's really an ideal. I think of it as a nice hot warm summer. It is hotter there than it probably would be on Islay or somewhere in Scotland, but the winters are similar. Not a lot of snow, somewhat mild, but with wind and sea air and salt air everywhere.
Yep.
So really, really interesting. So get you one.
Oh, in my mind's eye, or mind's tongue, perhaps, I can taste the sea. Just a bit.
I have to retry it. Well, Ed, I mean, his photos, you ever see Ed, you got to ask him to show you photos of his trip there. They were just gorgeous. I remember them for 5 years that I wanted to go to Nantucket and see it for the first time, and I'd never really been. It was worth the trip. We loved it. Not inexpensive to be there, but a really beautiful place, amazing beaches. And you just drive out in the middle of nowhere and just pick a beach. No one's there. We did some fishing. We ate some great food and so on. Really, really lovely time. Our second and final bottle is the Nashville Barrel Company, NBC. And these guys get really a special shout out. I received this bottle through my buddy Ross, who is friends with some guys in a private buying club, a private bourbon head club, where these guys are just really into this. It's a passion for them. And so they'll go in, and some of them have really, really good pickers, great tastes, great palates. Like a sommelier, and they will go in and make private barrel selections where they'll get together as a group, and maybe if there's 100 people in the group and they each buy 2 or 3 or 4 bottles, they buy an entire cask, an entire barrel, and take the 200, 300, 400 bottles or whatever that comes out of that barrel. And they never really go to market. You don't buy them in the open market. So hard to find these bottles, really beautiful. But I recommend you, if you ever see something, occasionally they'll do little store picks here or there, mostly in Tennessee and Kentucky if you live around that area. It's worth a drive even to pick one up. Or find a buddy or a friend who knows someone that works there or knows someone that's around there, and see if you can get on the list. Now, if you're looking for a really great gift from me for my 50th in about 10 years, you can go ahead and pre-purchase an entire barrel, because it's Nashville Barrel Company. They've got about a 6-month wait list right now, even though they just opened a couple years ago, to get on the list to even buy your own barrel from them.
Yeah.
Once they age it, you then buy all the bottles, and then you can make your own name, your own sticker. So this one has the Thieves Guild sticker on the front, and then they added their own aftermarket sticker which says Magic Carpet Ride, because it is a rye whiskey, not a bourbon.
Yep.
Although that bourbons, ryes, different spirits. Last thing about NBC, besides nice folks and so forth, our buddy Benton Jackson helped get us the bottle along with Ross and the Thieves Guild. But what's also interesting is they are not making everything on site, similar to a High West or some others. This particular brand is sourcing juice, basically buying moonshine to make bourbon, buying rye from, if you're at MGP, basically almost all rye is made in Indiana, and then they age it themselves, their own barrels, their own selections, and they hand select the juice to put in it. So they've got a wide variety of stuff too. So it's very, very hard to get. Bordering on unfindable. That may change with time. It's not like it's hard to find any bottle, but these single barrel select versions are really, really tough. So we wanted to feature it and give a little shout out to the NBC folks, because we love people that are just passionate. This is not a way to make billions. This is for people who are really, really passionate about their business and about whiskey and so forth, like we are. And so we wanted to feature it. Great stuff. So let's give her a try. This one I know is a little lighter.
Yeah.
Quite a bit lighter. It is a rye, so hoping to taste some peppery notes. And this is more of the rocket fuel stuff.
Yeah.
114 proof, 56% alcohol, so not insane, but getting up there.
Yeah.
7-year-old rye.
Yeah, I mean, you can taste that it's been aged, even though the higher alcohol, so it's delicious and smooth. There's a little bit of sweetness to it, but as you might expect, as you mentioned, the pepper.
Yeah. Well, something I mentioned about this bottle, actually, to our group, is that whatever you taste, you taste. It doesn't have to be the same as everybody else. And I tasted something that I described as almost a plasticky, rubbery inside of a balloon flavor, coupled with a little bit of bubblegum and sweetness, which is probably, according to the experts, wrong, but it's what I tasted. I taste again here. I describe one of my favorite bottles of all time, the Glenmorangie Milchon, as an example that tastes similar, even though one's a rye and one's a single malt. There's nothing in common between the two. And so a lot of it is what you taste. A good comparison, too, if you want to buy 2 high-end bottles, just find an NBC rye, and then compare that to, I just got 2 new bottles of the Sazerac, the Thomas Handy Sazerac, which is their high-end Sazy. That's also typically aged 6 or 7 years most of the time, and goes for $600, $700, $1,000 a bottle, because it's so rare and hard to find. it's not worth that. Even though I buy it sometimes to trade or to keep, or it's a special bottle, it's amazing to just compare them and ask yourself, is this really worth it? These are very much worth it. If you can find an NBC for $150 to $300 a bottle, you're doing great. The Notch, very expensive for what it is, but as a special occasion, the beautiful gift box and packaging, beautiful bottle. It's a something to buy on a lark, but it's also something to buy and store and sell for $400 later, 5 years from now, and get some money on it.
No, and I think in both cases, I mean, we've both been to the 888 Distillery on Nantucket, and it's, again, nice people, obviously extremely passionate about their craft. Haven't been to Nashville Barrel Company yet, but also tough to get in. And I think that, what's interesting about them is that they built this brand where there's not only a wait list for a bottle, there's a wait list for you to have the opportunity to buy the equivalent of 300 bottles.
Right. And that's how a lot of our doctors feel, which is there's a wait list if you want to place a fully refundable deposit to even reserve a time to have surgery with one of our doctors.
Yeah.
I don't love this, but one of our doctors is booked out 7 months. Another one's 4.5 or 5. That's actually too far. We got to raise prices.
Yep.
But it's a nice feeling. And those folks can afford a Notch.
Exactly. Or a couple.
Yeah. Maybe.
Which brings us full circle. Because I thank you for indulging us, by the way, in a particularly long intro, because it's just been a while.
I thought that was the meat of it. We're going to teach some stuff too, but you're here for the whiskey tasting.
That's why you're here, is to hear about our travel and whiskey tasting. We love it, we enjoy it, and we hope you do too, a little bit about us. But obviously we want to share a little bit about what we've been seeing in practices, what we've been thinking about, what we're looking at over the next 6 months. As Jon alluded to, is our topic of the 6-month mantra. So, with that said, I mean, certainly even some of my recent experience has a lot of it has been obviously working directly with the staff and also staffing jobs. I mean, it's interesting between you, me, Dan, Abby, like we've been staffing several positions over the course of the last 7 months.
Which I didn't really anticipate. I figured everyone would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to just have a job. I'm just going to keep it.
Yeah.
Which, well, of course, we want people to love their jobs. But, during darker times like that, I think most people who had one would just say, well, I'm just staying where I'm at for now. We'll see what shakes out. But that wasn't really true.
Exactly. And then we, on one of our previous podcasts, the topic specifically was the staffing during this time and kind of what we were seeing as we were, sourcing resumes and actually doing interviews, etc. So, with that said, tell us a little bit about the 6-month mantra.
Yeah, so it is interesting. I mean, up until the moment the pandemic hit, we were in the largest positive market in 50 straight years, both in terms of the stock market being up, but also staffing and unemployment at an all-time low. And so we had talked a lot about what are the tips and keys to retaining good people. Yeah. Because it's so hard to find anyone good. And then now things have obviously completely flip-flopped, where unemployment might be 8 to 12% or something right now. Almost near historic highs, almost not Great Depression levels, but certainly Great Recession levels. Really, really bad. Maybe highly concentrated in specific sectors like, hospitality and so on, but broadly pretty bad all over the place. And a lot of people were affected. And so one would have thought again that, well, everyone's unemployed. It's easy to find good people. No one's going to quit. What we found is that even in this economy, the cream still rises to the top. Good people are able to just go somewhere else and get a good job. In our specific industry, times are technically better than ever. Most of our doctors were completely closed and shut down for between 4 weeks and 4 months in Massachusetts. Those offices are still having their best year of all time. So it was delayed revenue. Similar with us. We didn't sign any new deals for the first 3 months of the pandemic because everybody said, call me when this is done. I don't know if I can hire you. But the last 3 months, we've probably tripled our normal sales for that time period. And we're all booked out ourselves into 2021 ourselves. So we're finding that actually good people are willing to leave jobs. They will not stick around if you furloughed them when you didn't need to because you're already rich. They know it, or they perceive that to be true. If you didn't bring people back quick enough, if you didn't treat people well throughout the pandemic, if they just don't love their job and they're good, they will go find jobs, especially in our market, because all of your competitors are hiring and doing well and can afford them. And so it still remains true that we want to find great people. It still remains true we want to retain the best people. And it also is true that there are some changes in staff. Now, what I will say is this. If you've got people that maybe aren't great, you're a manager listening to this, you're a coordinator who knows your other buddy isn't so good, you're a doctor who knows you need to replace people. The reality is a good time, though. There's lots and lots of people out there that are good. And there's really two things I'd note. One is there's not many good people who already work in the industry, because the good ones are employed, have remained employed, and are gainfully employed. But there are lots of good people from outside the industry that want to break into it. So we've been filling a lot of jobs with people like Ed or me. or Abby before she entered the industry, or Jill who came from pharmaceuticals, and finding people that have great sales acumen, great pedigree, great achiever mentality, all the things you want to find on a resume, but maybe we have to teach them some of the plastics, or teach them some of the LASIK, or teach them some of the particular specialty or terms and so on that you need, and so it's a great time to hire. With that said, I've really kind of formulated my next 6MM, which is what I call my 6-month mantra, where I find that I kind of fixate on a big concept that just gets in my head and I believe to be true, and then I also try to get that into my practices so it can become a habit, and that habit can sort of permeate the organization and become long-term culture. And the biggest thing that just keeps going into my head, it was like a dream I was having for like weeks and weeks, is you need one more person on your team than you have. You need one more person on the team than you have. You need one more person on your team than you think you do. You need more staff than you believe is necessary. And that's really been my 6-month mantra.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting because, when we are staffing these positions, either A, because we've signed a new client that needs the staffing, and so now we're sourcing a position for somebody that either they decided they need to replace because maybe they don't have the right fit, or because they're growing and they actually do need even more people to continue to service that growth. But sometimes there is turnover, sometimes good turnover. Somebody, gets their hubby gets a promotion and they move across the world. They win the lottery, move to Tahiti, whatever, things happen. Decide to raise a family instead, and all these good things that can happen. And so we're sourcing.
Making those COVID babies.
That's exactly right.
Board in the house.
Right about now.
Yeah.
So now with that said, we're looking at all these different kinds of resumes, but at the same time, we're also looking at our current practices and looking at when a lot of people were understaffed. And what we've noticed is, of course, that at any given time in your practice, you're going to be either understaffed or overstaffed. You're never perfectly staffed. And in fact, it's a bad thing to be perfectly staffed because, as we've seen, if you're perfectly staffed, your weeks or maybe months away from being really understaffed. And so it's really hard to find that balance. And so it's always actually better to be a little bit overstaffed. Now, of course, often the doctors or ownership management of the practice is always thinking, well, what really bothers me is that they don't have enough to do and that I'm paying too much and not getting enough. And, they're going to be bored. Well, if you think your staff's bored, give us a call. We will find them things to do that would be very, very productive.
We've got ideas.
Yeah. But, beyond that, as we've talked about, as you mentioned, since our first podcast in 2014 and since founding in 2008, the most important expense in your entire practice is your people. And whatever you think you're paying, and it's so much, and we're not just suggesting you go out and hire a bunch of $300,000 a year employees. That's not the answer. But if you look at your top line expenditure, whatever you think it is, it's probably still not quite enough, either because your people need better incentive, need better pay, need something to be that much more competitive to retain your people, or you need another person.
Right. And so a lot of it is, I think that a lot of business owners have trouble with the why behind it. They're like, well, I'm fine. It's not that I don't have 40 grand or 50 grand, John, or 80 grand or 20 grand, John, or whatever. I guess I have it, but they don't quite understand the why. They think to themselves, well, first of all, right now I've got the team I need, I think I've got enough. I was trained by every textbook I've read, every leadership and sales and staffing book, every business speech I hear about running a frugal business and not wasting money. And sure, invest a little bit. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish, but basically, let's run a tight business. Let's be efficient. Six Sigma certified.
Yeah.
Let's run it. And what's interesting is I believe that they don't understand the real reasoning and logic behind it. They don't understand the data and the facts. Because what they're saying is intuitive. They're not wrong in the thought process. But that's not actually factually correct, because true efficiency means you're wringing the rag, right? You're getting the business out of the leads that you have or out of the customers that you have and getting the most revenue and profit per customer that you possibly can. And that's not actually happening when you have turnover and you're running a quote-unquote lean ship by keeping staffing under control. So just to back into the why, and then we'll give a couple of reasons for, what we really find in terms of why is you have to understand the basics of staffing and data. Number one, during good economic times, average turnover is about 20% per year. And that seems high, but when you actually think about you and your career and every employee you've ever had, how many people send you a resume where they've stayed in a job 5 years? Because if you average 5 years in a job, that would mean it's 20% turnover. You have 5 people, every year one of them turns over. If the average one lasts 5 years. So my father-in-law's got a great team member, Cindy, and she's been there 34. She's a unicorn. I mean, that's not normal. Even me, I had 2 jobs for 1 year each, got fired and quit one. Thank you. We're great. Hire us as consultants.
Real job hopping.
But I had my job before that for 10 years. I've had my job since then for 12 or 13 or whatever it is. So most people don't last in everything forever. So even if you've got 10 employees, you are average if you have 8 of them there in a year. So it would be naive of you to believe that everyone's going to stick around. So I'm fully staffed. I got 10 people. They're all pretty happy. Well, they may be, but like you said, they get pregnant and move. They get in a fight with someone. They get mean girled. Something changes. They get an offer for 50 grand more and you can't match it.
Yep.
They're going to bounce. And so that's if you're average. Now, if you're really bad, we see offices where they lose their entire team. We see that every year. It's not an anomaly.
Yeah.
We have other offices say, well, I'm really good. And they are. And they go a whole year without losing anybody. And then they go a second year and only lose one person. Well, still.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is to understand that data, that you're going to lose people most likely this year and certainly over the next couple, even if you're very good. We professionally staff, train, and manage people. I'd say we lose an average of 1 human being every 2 to 3 years, and we're probably one of the greatest that have ever existed within our industry in terms of recruiting the right people and retaining them. And that's not saying I'm so great. I don't even think I'm as good as I used to be. I'm learning this COVID thing and how to manage people without being near them as much, and even I'm learning.
Yeah.
But we're paid to do this, and we still lose people because we're not perfect and life goes on.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose people, which means you're going to be short-staffed. So that's number one. The second data point you have to understand is that you also just have shortages of staff. If you have 5 employees, you're losing 1 a year. If you have 15 employees, you're losing 3 a year. Add to that just vacation and sickness. Put aside COVID. Just get a cold, get a flu. Not sure what you have, you go home early. And then you have, let's say, your employees a relatively modest 2 weeks of vacation a year, which ain't great, by the way. You're going to have trouble retaining if that's all they get.
Market.
But if they're out 2 or 3 weeks a year and you've got 10 people, that's 30 weeks a year that you are understaffed just like that. Mm-hmm. And you can make up for some of that, but you can't replace 30 weeks or 1,200 hours worth of work with other people in the office in almost any business.
Right.
So you now are losing people, and you've got 30 or 40 weeks worth of people that are just out randomly for sickness and vacation, and you wonder why everyone on your team is stressed. To put a bow tie on this concept, I saw a great meme or GIF or whatever, GIF or whatever it's called, come through, and basically it just said, we want to build team morale and so forth. So one of the suggestions that we had from our employees was to hire more help so that we're not overworked and not staying late, so that we can be happier in our role and do better work and enjoy time with family so we stick around long run. So what we told them, of course, is no, not that kind of help. We're having a yoga instructor come in on Thursday for an hour so that we can all zen out and relax. And so it's not against yoga or having those moments with your staff, but the reality is they don't really need yoga. They need to not need yoga.
Right. That's exactly right, actually.
So everyone is perennially unstaffed because we believe that we can't afford it because it sounds like we're wasting money. But then we realize that we are losing by having 30 or 40 weeks of missing staff, coupled with having even 1 human being, let alone 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people turn over a year. We're losing huge revenue. Yeah. If you lost your head salesperson tomorrow, ask yourself if it takes you even 8 weeks to hire, train, and manage a new person. That assumes they're somehow as good out of the starting gates. How much business does that lose for you? I know several of my practices, that would be in 2 months $1 million loss.
Yeah.
For many other practices, it might be a $50,000 or $100,000 loss. But for almost every business we work with, losing a top nurse, a top injector, a top PCC, a top manager is anywhere between a 6-figure mistake and $1 million plus mistake. But we want to save $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 or $100,000.
Right. Now, also keep in mind too, where when you take a look at your current staff, for example, right? Now, we will be the first ones to dive in when anybody says, I'm overworked, I don't have enough time, I have way too much to do. We're going to be the ones to dive in immediately to say, okay, I hear you, but let's take a look at what you're doing and if you're doing it as efficiently as you possibly could be. So when you say wring the rag, just like we want to find motivated people that want to reach their capacity, we want to help them do that. And part of the way we present opportunity a lot of times is say, you actually want to be better and better and better and increase your capacity because it prevents the need for the doctor to hire another patient coordinator.
And we structure their pay to have incentives so that they want to do more and make more. And I would argue the coordinators that you, Ed, have trained, or Dan or anyone else, probably achieve more in a day than almost anybody else that's ever not hired Yellow Telescope. So it's, like you said, it's not about getting rid of efficiency or just making them bored. But.
Well, no, exactly right. And I think that to that point, though, I think that and frankly, a lot of business owners, doctors, the management, et cetera, are going to be a little bit cynical when all they hear is their staff saying they're too busy and spread thin, and they start thinking to themselves, Really, are they though? I mean, I don't see them doing all the work on the OR all day, and yeah, I'm busy, but really, are they that busy? And it almost just sounds like complaining. But you actually do have to really listen to that feedback and actually look at what they're doing, because right now, not only is there the risk that if they are spread thin, and that can only go on so long until there's burnout, and then you do have turnover, and then you really are in a world of you know what. Imagine just the missed opportunity right now that you're missing out on, right? You're very successful, and that's obfuscating the missed opportunities because you just need another person and you don't even realize it, even though it sounds like they're just complaining because they're a little busy.
Exactly. And I think that I've found, and you know, I think we have a lot of happy doctors, a lot that are really enjoying their lives, but I would argue that probably a good third of the doctors that I speak to, business owners I speak to, when I start speaking with them, have some level of what feels like a depression. And I've been there. I mean, I think most business owners have had those moments, whether it's just due to being overwhelmed or stress or challenges or hurricanes or whatever comes through your town, where you just are down for a little while. But I find that sometimes people have just accepted that as their state. They just work 12 to 14-hour days. They just work 6 or 7 days a week. They just aren't that happy as people. And that's it, because they're making money. Mm-hmm. And although I'll then say to them, well, what if you gave me 40 grand and I could make it all go away? They usually would say, well, that sounds okay. But I say, well, great, you need another employee, and they say, well, you know, that's a lot of expenditure, that's a lot of new money. You know, John, I don't know about that. And then I ask, well, how are you feeling? And they're like, I'm ready to jump off a bridge right now. And this constant state of lack of peace of mind, of unsettling, lack of settlement in the way people are living their lives permeates this industry. It's why there's high suicide rates and high drug abuse and alcohol abuse rates. 1 or 2 whiskeys notwithstanding.
Sure.
And the reality is you can structure your business and your practice to work hard, even if you're a major worker, and be out of that office on time. And have yourself in protection. And when I think about what is the cause of almost every iota of that depression, frustration stuff, and I would say in 90% of the doctor's cases, when I really look at why does this guy or this woman seem so down, they always are just overwhelmed and overworked. And the reason why is they don't have enough staff. And the reason why is they thought they had enough, and then someone left. Mm-hmm. And then when someone left, all that work got piled on other people. They started to resent the doctor and be negative, and then they do a downward spiral. And then when they do hire, because they're worried about their team being so stressed, what do? They rush into hiring. Mm-hmm. Versus when you have one additional person, and these are the reasons for. When you have, and again, like Ed said, we're not talking about a new COO for 300 grand. If you've got one that's good, you have to take certain risks. When you look particularly at sales, mid-level management, front desk, that kind of role, you can have a hybrid individual that knows enough to be dangerous in all those areas. They can know a little bit about insurance if you do insurance. They'll know a lot about sales if you want sales. They can know enough to be able to take over for the front desk or answer phones for a day or two or a week if someone's out, or for a month if we need to replace somebody. There's a couple benefits. Number one, you're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not losing all that business and all those sales.
Yep.
Obviously, so that's good for the money, and that's why it's actually makes you money to have more staff. Number two, when you do have that unfortunate, unwanted, and unforeseen turnover, instead of going from barely okay, if not perfect, to holy hell, I'm dying here, you go from a little overstaffed to maybe wasting 30 grand a year, although it won't be wasted. You're going to have them contact the 20,000 people in your database and do a million other things, or call us so we can give them ideas. Do email blasts, set up a snail mailer, a million different things we can do. And you'll go from a little bit overstaffed to still perfect. So while you're searching, the people you select, the people you hire shift. So instead of rushing to pick the first decently capable individual you can because you need the help, because that other domino is tipped, which is that your staff is unhappy, because the other domino tip, which is that they left, which is because of the other domino that you didn't set up right, which you don't have enough staff, instead you're upward spiraling. You lose someone, so you're still perfectly staffed. The team appreciates you because they're not worried, nothing changes for them. You can be quick about it, but not rush. You can look for someone on your own time. If it takes a few months to find the right fit, you do. You end up with a better person who sells more and makes you more money, but who also gets along better with the team and is more likely to be a long-term fit, so you don't redo it again and again and again. And so the issue with practices right now, and the issue with businesses of all sorts right now, and my 6-month mantra to you is to work to hire at least one more person than you really need. Now, if you've got 40 employees, you probably need 2 or 3 more employees than you need. And if you aren't running a business that makes you the $100,000 or $200,000 you need to do that, then you got to change industries and shut your business down. Mm-hmm. Because you need to have something that has a decent margin, or pick a different industry. Our industry, medicine, has the margin. It's easy. And the last thing I'd mention, Ed, is I have a lot of people who nickel and dime over lots of things, and I believe my old 6-month mantra is to not worry as much about worry less about the money in your pocket and more about the money you never saw. Meaning, if I went to almost anyone listening to this right now, or even you, and said, hey, can you just write me a check for $10,000 right now for no reason, most would say, oh, that seems insane, that seems silly. Or if I just called one of your patients and said, Dr. Smith's a dingbat, fire him. Well, I wouldn't do that, but you'd lose 10 grand. You'd be mad as hell at me. You'd call, you'd email, you'd write a negative review, you'd do whatever you could to mitigate that. But when you don't book somebody because someone's out sick and you don't have any backup, you lose the same 10 grand, but you're worrying more about the money in your pocket because it feels bad to give out $100. But losing $1,000 you never had is easy. Losing $1 million you never had is easy. So remember, that's money you should have had. That's your retirement. It's $10,000 that would have been directly in your bank that you don't have because of the poor decisions that you're making. So breathe the 6-month mantra, hire and fill positions. Use us if you need to staff them. We have a wing for that. But if not, do it on your own. Get some good people so you're not so stressed out. We've got the money, you've got the time, and see how your lifestyle changes. Me personally, I have a morning to myself every week. I'll play a round of golf. I'll go play, go jogging. I'll go to the pool and read a book. I just do it. Why? Because I can run a multi-million-dollar company and do that. And I work harder than most people I've ever met.
True.
I know you have your mindfulness and calming things and a million other things that you always have projects. And hell, you went to the Bahamas for a month and while you're working. You don't need to work 5 days a week even. But if you're going to work 5 days a week, let's not make it 6 or 7. Let's not make it till 10 p.m. on those weekdays.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, what's interesting hearing us, hearing you discuss all of these things is that I also think about folks watching, listening, and still several folks saying, well, yeah, I bet a lot of practices are like that, but maybe mine's not. Or I don't actually even know. So, I think that if you aren't even sure, right? It's always like when we talk to an initial practice call, for example, and they're just thinking they might need some help, and we're doing a lot of due diligence, and we say, well, how many consultations are you seeing, and how many of those are booking on the spot? Well, if the answer is anything less than 6 out of 10, you need our help. And if the answer is I'm not sure, you definitely need our help.
Yeah, you don't know your data or your stats. Yeah.
Right, and so I think part of it is first knowing your data. And you need to be able to take a look and actually do a little bit of an audit and think, okay, what if we did have, say, a YellowTelescope or a consulting firm or somebody come on and actually take a look to see what actually everyone's even doing. We've always said that whenever there is turnover among staff, that's a perfect opportunity to then actually take a step back and take a look at what everyone is actually doing, so that if there does need to be coverage in a short amount of time, which again, if you're appropriately staffed, hopefully there doesn't need to be much of, we can then redelegate certain types of duties that other people might be doing. And like, for example, we're always trying to get non-sales related work off the plate of a patient care coordinator, for example. So take the opportunity to look for what you want to hire for, but also right now, think about every single member of your team, from front desk to patient coordinator to management to MA to the folks that are coming in to help clean the place on the weekends, and find out if everyone is properly paid, find out if everyone has the right amount of responsibilities and if they should even be doing those things. Then also take a look and say, okay, when we do hire the person, because as you probably heard from this podcast, it's not really a matter of if you need it. We're pretty sure you need the extra person, or 2 or 3, depending on the size of your practice. But now the question is, to answer your question, well, what are they even going to do? Take a look at what your staff's already doing and find the opportunity for them. And if you're not sure about it, give us a call.
Yeah, the staff will share with you what they need help with, is my experience. And a lot of it is floating and filling in. And that's a job that certain people crave and are passionate about. They're excited. Your personality style adapting, dealing that we teach works well with that, which is how can I be of service and help? And I'm happy to kind of chameleon and work into different areas, and you enjoy the variety that comes with that. The reality is, it's not great to talk about, but let's take the scenario that someone hires the extra individual, we get everything completely buttoned up, dialed in, ringing the rag, super efficient, no gas leaking out of the tank, and other cliches and analogies. And then after that, you say, you know what, I actually have 40 hours too much. I'm just completely wet. There's nothing for him or her to do. Well, what's nice is you can lay off. And although that stinks, people can quit, and they do. You do not owe them your life. They do not owe you theirs. They're not in servitude to us. We serve our employees, not vice versa. But if it really got that bad, you would have to lay someone off at that point. Now, the thing is this: we've been running at this for 10 or 11 years, and I've been running companies since I was 19. Ask me how many times that situation has occurred.
Can't remember one.
Rhymes with hero. Not a single time with a single human being ever in the history of my career has that occurred. But it might, and if it does, we have an unfortunate conversation and someone had some work for a while. You serve as a fantastic reference. Give them a month's worth of severance and chalk it up to whatever, you can afford it and move on. But that's not likely to happen. I've yet to see it. So it just makes sense. The point I really think about as we head into 2021 is, we just made it through the time that everyone knew would come at some point, that no one thought anyone would survive. Mm-hmm. I'm reading an interesting book that's just kind of about, it's from the guy who wrote Devil in the White City. Eric Larson wrote a book basically on Churchill in World War II. It's just kind of fascinating history. And, part of the point is there was a point where it was absolutely sure that England was going to just lose to Germany. Like just the Nazis were going to win. It wasn't like maybe, it was sort of like, we're going to go out fighting. But that's kind of it. We're German now. This is it. We're going to go out dying, or we're going to go out crying, and then they won. And so the world made it through that. Not with flying colors. It was hellish, but they made it through that. We just went through a pandemic, which is peanuts compared to that. This was nothing compared to that, and we're still, I guess, in it.
Oh yeah.
But most officers had their best year of all time.
Yeah.
What is it we're so afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we not, if not bulletproof, at least wearing that bulletproof vest with a little confidence? What is it we're afraid to spend? Why is it that we're afraid of a little bit of money? And then ask yourself, is 25 more years before you retire, or 5 or 10 more years, being in a constant state of stress and overwhelmed nature and freaking out and anxiety and impacting your relationships at home and with your family and your children and your coworkers? And just being that guy or girl, being that boss that deep down nobody likes you. And even though they maybe think you have good intentions, they've kind of checked out on you, and you've got the reputation in town of being a high turnover guy because you think that's how it is. You're being a donkey if you listen to this and then keep doing the same thing over and over again. I was kind of raised that way in business. I kind of did that at some level when I was younger. And then I just wisened up and I said, if I just pay some people a little bit more, the money will come. If I hire better people, the money will come. And if I invest a little bit more, the money will come, and the money came. I'm not the richest man ever. You're not the richest, but we do fine, and we also pay our people well. We've got enough staff right now, and at some point, probably need to hire. We're already thinking about who we need to hire in 2021 to kind of build our social media team a little further, because that's growing. So do yourself the favor. This is an educational talk. It's a mantra, but it's also a psychological talk. It's also a motivational talk. So that was really, really important. It's something we've really been experiencing through the pandemic. We got enough stress.
Yeah.
It's hard enough raising the children. It's hard enough running a business. It's hard enough dealing with angry patients. Let's have the staff to support us. You deserve it. Think of it as a pat on the back. Instead of buying that extra fancy bottle of whiskey or taking an extra vacation once a year, invest it in one good employee who makes your life great year round.
Yep. Well, I think you're right. When you talk about making yourself bulletproof, as we look back at this year and look towards next year, sure, and this was actually a big part of my message in my VIP program at the seminar this year. Sure, we could say that we are much more bulletproof now than we were in February because of what we've been through. Mm-hmm. Similarly, when we were in March coaching practices through, we said, look, in some respects, we've been through this in 2008, 2009, 2010, so we did have the knowledge, but at the same time, the whole world was woefully unprepared for this. And I think that we also know that something like this, we didn't know it was going to be this. We knew something like this was coming, and therefore we know something like this is coming again. And so what can you do to be able to make yourself not even necessarily bulletproof, but just prepared to cushion whatever blow you're going to be able to get? And at a minimum, have the peace of mind of that additional person. And sure, we could do a whole other podcast, like my VIP session on mindfulness and about things that you can do to self-protect and protect the people around you and be that better person. So, but by thinking about it, just hire that one more person, give yourself the peace of mind. Happy 2021.
Cheers, buddy. Folks, upcoming items, get yourself signed up this week, if not as soon as you hear this, for the Yellow Telescope 11th anniversary event. We really appreciate you coming. If you're a first timer, you get a huge discount. Can't wait to see all of our repeat clients. There's a reason we rated a 9.56 out of 10. We don't have our reviews for this year yet.
That's right.
9.56 out of 10 based on anonymous reviews in 2019. Always a beautiful 5-star hotel. Your price includes 3 nights in an ocean view balcony room at a gorgeous hotel. This last year was the St. Regis Val Harbor. The year before was Mandarin Oriental. The year before was Fontainebleau. So we really put on a great event. If you need help with web or social media, check out iscreamsocialmedia.com, like an iPhone I scream, like a shouting ice cream cone, socialmedia.com, SEOversite.com, which is SEOversite.com. For web help, check out the new YellowTelescope.com. We are speaking actually coming up this weekend. It may be a little too late for you if you're not listening to this week, but I've got virtual talk going live at the Network of Florida Otolaryngologists combined event.
Yep.
So if you're in that very specific niche, you'll hear from me online about social media marketing and the marketing ladder. We also will be speaking later this year at Miami Cosmetic Surgery, Global Aesthetics Conference, Vegas Cosmetic Surgery. So stay tuned. We'll be at all those virtually or live that we can be safely.
Yeah.
And what else do we have going on? New Real Self podcast is coming out with Tom Seary that I recorded with him about a month ago. That should be out here in the next 0 to 2 months, I believe. So I was really excited to be featured on that and chat with Tom. Good man.
Yeah. Always have good stuff going on.
Yeah, well, we're around. If you're in Miami, look us up. We'll meet you for a distanced beverage or fist bump or whatever.
Yeah.
We appreciate you listening to episode 27. 28 will be coming at you soon.
Thanks for joining us. Good to see you again.
You as well.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.